Well, hello Internet, and welcome to the final part of my PHP message board. It's actually become a PHP slash JavaScript slash MySQL slash JQuery message board. But either way, it's all done. And in this presentation, you're going to see how to put all the final pieces together to make it work. And at this point, whether you know it or not, you pretty much know all you need to know to create most anything using PHP, JavaScript, JQuery, and MySQL. So what have you learned in this tutorial? How to register new users, how to activate user accounts, how to set up CAPTCHA systems, how to verify user identities, and how to create login scripts, among numerous other things. So what are you going to need to finish this off? Well, we got to make a couple changes to the database, real simple stuff. You need the login script code from the previous tutorial because we're going to be using that almost exactly to create the forum part of the message board. You need the config messageboard.php file, and all of this code is available. There's a link in the underbar if you want to go get it. We're going to make a couple changes to that config message board code, and also we're going to have to create a new file called sendinfo to server, and we're going to do all that in this tutorial. And here is the previous login page. We're going to be using this almost exactly. We're just going to be making a couple changes. And after we make those changes, you can see it's going to be a working comment board or message board or forum or whatever. And you can see here, whenever I click on comments, it shows all the comments underneath it here, but it doesn't open up these comments. But if I click on that, it's then going to show those comments. And if I click on it again, it's going to go away. And on top of that, if I decide that I want to leave a comment, like who cares? I'm just typing in anything and post comment, you're going to see comment has been submitted. And indeed, if we reload this guy and scroll down here, who cares? And you can see that it went right in there. So this actually doesn't take much code, so let's just get right into it. All right, so this is the code from the previous login page, and I just really have to make a couple changes. Inside of here, in the script part where I have the reCAPTCHA options variable, what I need to do is come in here and insert some jQuery code that's going to add button events and get comments dynamically and allow commenting period, like we saw previously, and also dynamically send comments to the server. So I got to put all that code in there. It's really not that much. And then down here in the main section, I got to grab all the messages from the server and display them. So that's all that needs changed inside of there. So I'm going to just jump into it right after I make a couple changes over in the database. And here I am over in the database, and I changed a couple things, but I'm going to show you how to change them on your own. And here is the message table inside of my MySQL database. And what I did differently here is I made it possible to not have to insert a value in the subject area because I found that that was unneeded, because whether you saw it or not, subject isn't listed multiple times. So I allowed this to be null, and it also helps me in a couple other different ways. And I also created this brand new guy inside of this database called message block. What that's going to do is it's kind of an ID that represents all of the messages in a string of messages. And what I mean by that is every single message or comment that is placed inside of here is going to have the same message block. So it allows me to very easily organize them. And how I was able to create those two things is first to change and allow subject to have a value of null. I typed in alter, or let's keep it all capitalized. Alter, table, messag, message, modify, subject, variable, number of characters, and I just set that for 50. Just like before, and a semicolon. Whenever I put that in there, by default, whenever you make a change to anything inside of here, and you do not put not null, it automatically considers that you want null to be a possibility. So by not putting not null in there, I now am going to be able to allow null characters or nothing to be entered in subject. And then to create the message block, the very last thing in the table, I used alter again, and I typed in table message, which is the name for this table, and then I typed in add column mess block int and value of 10 in there, unsigned, and then a semicolon. And that is how you create this additional piece inside of this table. And then you can also see, if I want to list out all of the data in there, you can see it's kind of a little bit messy, but that's because everything is so blown up. If I stretch this out, you can see exactly right here. See, everything is in the same message block if it's a comment that pertains to the same subject. And then I'm also tracking message ID, user ID, topic IDs, and dates, and all these other different things. So let's get into the coding area. So I created a new div inside of the login script, and it is called main. And I'm going to come in here. I'm going to show you how to grab messages from the server. You just have to understand that this was a hard tutorial to put together. So I hope it comes across. And also, I handicapped myself to only be allowed to use things that I have previously shown you in other tutorials. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a span inside of here, and I'm going to give it name class comments sent. And what this is going to do is whenever a comment is sent, a little message is going to pop up at the upper top of the screen. And if you want to see what that message looks like, you can go back to the beginning of this tutorial. It popped up there. But I'm going to leave it empty right now, and I'm going to later fill it in whenever a message is actually sent. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in some PHP code. I'm going to say if is set. What I'm doing here is testing to see if the person is logged in. So I'm checking if first name is set. I'm going to create a SQL query here. Select token ID from users where username is equal to the value stored in user ID. What I'm doing here is I'm verifying that the token that is stored in the browser that they are using is equal to the value that is stored, or the token value that is stored on our database. And that token value changes every single time they go from page to page. So this is a pretty good security thing. It's not perfect, but it is pretty ironclad. And then I'm going to perform a query or trigger an error. You are not logged in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if only one row was affected. And since there's only one user ID, or people are only allowed to use a specific user ID once, I know right here that there can only be one result. And if that's true, I want to fetch the result of this query, which is going to be the token. And then here I'm going to get rid of the result here to free up some memory. And then what I'm going to do is get all of the messages off of the server, because I can be pretty certain that this person is now logged in. So what I'm going to have to do is jump over into another file. We're going to come back to this here in a second, but I have to jump over into another file and make a couple changes. And that file is going to be the config file. Alright, so now I'm in the config file, and you've seen this before. It's config message board, to be very specific. And all of this stuff is going to stay the same. Nothing here is going to change right up until this point. And here I'm going to put a function inside of here called retrieve messages. You just saw that. And here all this is going to do is retrieve messages from the server. So I'm going to jump inside of this guy, and I think now you might understand why I try to cram everything into one file, because it can get confusing to explain this stuff. And here I'm just paying reference to the database. That's all I'm doing there. And now I'm going to create a new query. Select M, which is going to be a reference to the table called message. And I'm going to get the subject, message text, username, and U is a reference to the users table. I'm going to get the date that it was posted. I'm going to get the parent ID, m.user ID. I'm going to get the message block, and then the user ID for the messages itself. And I'm going to get this from the table called message, which I'm going to refer to as M. So I did that for shorthand reasons. And also I'm going to retrieve information from users as U. Again, shorthand reasons why I did that. Where, and here I'm going to say m.user ID is equal to the u.user ID. So I'm making certain that the user in the users table is the same user that posted the message. And I'm going to say order by m.message block, and then order them by the date that they were actually posted, and then close that off. So that's the query that I'm going to create. And I'm going to say result is equal to MySQL query, and I'm going to just issue this query or trigger an error if there was one. Trigger, not tragger. And I'm just going to say an error happened, whatever, just to put anything in there. And then what I'm going to do is go if MySQL, again, checking that the affected rows from this query is going to be greater than 0. And if it did, here I'm going to put something in here called tag switch. You'll see in a second what exactly this is. And then here I'm saying that while there's additional messages that came back from this query and were inserted into an array, I want to continue to cycle through them. And then I'm going to say if messages, this is the messages array, this guy right here. Well, I'm going to be able to actually get all that data from the database, from it. If the parent ID is equal to 0, I want to treat that information differently. What do I mean by that? Let's open up the database. See over here, parent ID is equal to 0. That means that it was the very first comment that was posted inside of here. Everything thereafter is going to be a number until it's the first original comment. So that's what that's checking. because we want to treat that differently. So if that was the parent, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you what tag switch is for. I'm going to say tag switch. I'm going to put a div around this guy, meaning the original comment. And I'm going to say here, I'm going to print out a closing div statement, or if this is false, I'm going to print out an opening div statement. And I'm going to give it a class equal to comment box. So it's just going to create a custom div based off of whether this is an original comment or not. That's all it's going to do. And then after it does that, it's going to go tag switch. I'm going to just change the value of this to the opposite of whatever it is. And that's all I'm doing there. So that allows me the ability to create custom opening and closing parts for my div. It's just something I hacked together. Well, then I'm going to want to do additional other things, like for example, print out the subject, which I'm not always going to do, and then close off the paragraph tag there. And then I'll print out the subject. And this is from the messages array, the array that was created whenever I created the query that got all the messages from the database. This is just printing out custom code to the screen via. And then here I'm going to create the actual comment word that whenever it is clicked on, it's going to trigger a call to jQuery. I hope this is understandable. It's just very hard to explain things this complicated in a video tutorial. You have to understand that. All right, then I'm going to create div of class type equal to comments. And this is where the form that will allow people to comment will pop up. And here I'm going to create a text area, just basic HTML you're looking at here. And this is going to be called comment. And I'm going to give it columns equal to 60 and rows equal to, I don't know, 10. And then here is the default text that's going to show up right like that. I'm going to go echo. And here I'm going to put a whole bunch of hidden values, which is going to be information I want to pass to the server. There's another intricate way of doing this, but like I said, this is kind of getting a little complicated, so I didn't want to make it even more complicated. In here I'm going to pass the username. Again, all this was taken from that query that you saw above. And then what I'm going to do is copy this to save myself some time and create 6 of these. I'm going to put a space between them actually. Okay, I got 6 of them right there. Let's put a space here too. Okay, so now I'm going to just change what I'm going to be passing. Okay, so I'm passing username. I also want to pass over the parent ID, and there's parent ID, and this actually is going to be equal to 1. Remember, parent ID for an original comment is always 0, so anything else is going to be considered a regular comment. Hopefully that makes sense. Then I also want to pass over message block, right like that, and I also want to pass over the token ID and the topic ID, so I'm just changing these values. And the user ID. And then I have to put in, almost done here actually, I'm going to echo out the screen, button type is equal to button. It's going to have an ID equal to 1 button, post comment, which will show up on the button. And then I got to close off my form, and then I have to close off the div altogether, right like that. Now, in circumstances whenever this is not the first original comment, this is actually going to be real simple. I'm going to echo to screen, div class, and it's equal to comments, and I'm going to echo to screen, messages, message text, which is going to be the actual message the person left, echo, via, it's going to be the name of the commenter, their username, and then echo out the closing div, and then close off everything, and you're done. And those are all the changes you need to make to the file called config messageboard.php. And then all of those are all done. So all this code retrieves all of those messages. So now I need to jump back over to the forum part of this guy, which is right here, and I'm going to continue. That was retrieve messages you just saw that I just created. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick the person out if their session is not active or they're not logged in. This is simple. Session, token, underscore ID. Here I'm checking the result, meaning the 0 index of the array that was created up here. See, row is right here. This is an array. And part 0 is going to be the token ID. So if the token ID that's stored on the browser is equal to the one that's stored on the database, I'm going to come in here and go logged in is equal to 1, just as a note to myself later on. And if it token ID is different than the one stored on the database, well, we want to perform a completely different action, which is to kick the person out. So we want to say header, and this is how you kick them out, and change the location, and I'm going to type in localhost. Obviously, you probably won't unless you're doing this on your computer and not on a server somewhere. So if they're not logged in, I'm going to send them to the login page and tell them to log in. And then I'm going to say MySQL close and exit out of this script. And this is done. I just need to close off this else statement and then close off the other if statements. And we're finished with that part. Now what I got to do is, if you remember whenever I was in the config guy over here, I created a button, and that button is right here, and it's called one button. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create over on my message or my forum part of my program, I'm going to put in some jQuery code. So scroll up in here to the script area, right in here where our reCAPTCHA options is located. And then inside of here, we're going to write some jQuery code. So I'm going to hook up some events to one button, and with jQuery, you bind events with the bind function. And the event I want to bind is a click, meaning they click on it. And if they do click on it, I want to call dynamically a function called sendInfo to server. So we're going to dynamically send information to the server using jQuery. And then under here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the div with the class called comments. I want to hide all of them whenever the page is loaded. So that is all the additional comments, meaning these guys, whenever this page is loaded, they are all hidden. So that's what I'm talking about. This down here is what I am hiding in the code that I'm showing you. Then what I'm saying is I want to target a link of the class getComments. And if it's clicked on, meaning this is going to be the link called comments over here, this guy right here is what I'm targeting. What I want to do is I want to get any clicks on it and run some code on them. I want to say this, meaning this link, I want to target all the siblings, being all of the divs with the class name comments, and I want to toggle them, meaning I want to show them or hide them based off of their current situation. And then I want to return false here, and then close this off. So that's just going to toggle whenever the comments link is clicked on. All right, now what do I got to do? Well, I got to create the function called sendInfo to server. So I'm going to go in here and go function, sendInfo to server. I'm not actually going to put anything in there. Then what I'm going to do, and this is what we call Ajax. In that span that I originally created, I called it comment sent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load into it comment submitted or comment rejected based off of whether the person was logged in or not. And using load, what this is going to do is it's going to actually call the PHP program that is right here and execute it. And what I'm going to do here is say that I want to target all the values that are stored in the form with the ID, the form. And how you do that is by calling serialize array like that. And what that'll do is it'll send all the values that are stored in the form with the name the form. And then that is all the changes that need to be made to this forum page altogether. That's it. I know it seems like a ton, but it really isn't that much. And then all I need to do now is create the file that is called sendInfo to server. So let's jump over here and let's start making it. It's not actually that long and you're almost done if you're still there. What I'm going to do is go require once. And remember, this is a different file, so it doesn't have access to the database without calling the config message board.php file. So that's in essence what this guy's doing right here, calling that. Then what I get to do, remember I said all the values in the form are going to be passed to this guy. Well, I'm going to scrub all of those guys, meaning I'm going to send this to the escape data function, and it's going to perform some cleanup duties on this code. And I'm actually going to copy this and paste it a bunch of times, right like that. I'm going to change U to TID, and that's going to stand for topic ID. And then I'm going to make this MT, and that is going to stand for comment. And it's message text is what that is. PID. So what I'm doing is just cleaning all that information that's being sent from the forum. Parent ID. This tells me if it is an original comment or a non-original comment. Message block. It's going to tell me exactly what subjects are being tied together here. And token. And there's token. Then what I'm going to do is perform a query. I'm going to call it query 1. And I'm going to say, what I'm doing here is verifying that the user ID and the token ID on this system are the same. Again, this is for security reasons. From a table called users, where user ID is equal to the value that is stored there. And I'm going to verify that the token ID is the same as the token that's stored there, right like that. So that's the query. So I gotta go get the result. And I'm gonna call this result 2, call the MySQL query function, which is going to run this query on query 1, or trigger an error if it's not right. And here I'm gonna verify that only one row was affected. And if only one row was affected, that means the token ID and the user ID both match. So then what I can do is run the query that's going to actually put the message in this guy. And this is going to be called query 2. And what this is going to do is actually insert all of the information into the message table. So I'm going to insert user ID, topic ID, message text or the actual comment that they make, date, parent ID, and the block that the message is contained in. And these are the values I'm going to pass in. Well, the now function is going to insert the current date, and then finally message block. Then I'm going to scroll this up, then I'm going to trigger this query using the MySQL query function. And if it doesn't work, trigger an error. Then I'm going to echo to screen if the message has been sent or the comment. I'm going to put that in the span that we created previously. Then I'm going to exit out of the script and exit out of MySQL. Actually, I should probably put those in reverse direction, but either way. Else, if the message was not submitted, I'm going to put in here has been declined so that they scratch their head and wonder what they did wrong. Don't want to draw blame to myself if I can avoid it. And there you are. That's all the code that you need for this whole entire thing. Now everything will work. Again, it's available in the underbar. So what have I not done to totally complete this whole message board? Well, I don't have a create forgotten password script. However, I provide a link here to a place where I actually teach you how to make one of those. You could, of course, make this 100% dynamic using more jQuery, and of course I have a jQuery tutorial if you haven't seen it. And I could easily turn this into a chat system pretty much by just using a JavaScript function called setTimeout that would then call a function called getNewMessages or whatever you'd want to call it every 5 seconds or however often you'd like to do it, and then go and retrieve those messages automatically. And also I did not put a place inside of this message board for you to create a new subject or a new question or what have you. I on purpose didn't do that. This is what I call homework. I'm also, with this tutorial, trying to figure out how many people actually like these types of tutorials, because a lot of people ask for them, but I don't really believe many people are watching them. And in the time that it takes to make tutorials this extremely long and this extremely complicated, I could actually probably make 10 easier ones that could potentially be a lot more useful to people. So I'm kind of using this as a template, and if I don't get any comments on this tutorial, I am going to guess that that is because nobody waited and actually watched the whole entire thing. So this tutorial is kind of going to help me decide how to teach in the future. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. Otherwise, till next time.